All right, we're ready. We're live. Well, we're not live, but we're recording.
Yes.
So what's today? What's going to happen? What are we going to talk about this week?
Today, I want to see if we can address some questions about the ascendant
Great.
and the charts itself. It's kind of mysterious, actually, to me still.
Okay.
Okay. So before doing that, I wanted to ask you about the architecture of the chart. For example, if, let's say I'm a Taurus Ascendant, I'm going to have my trines as Virgo and Capricorn, for instance, right?
Right.
If I'm Aries, then I'm going to have Leo and I'm going to have Sagittarius. I wanted to know just in general to have that trine square, so the 5th and the 9th and then the 4th and the 10th. How does that, just with the dynamic of the signs, how should we read that or understand that?
Yeah, it's because of the number of zodiacs are 12.
Yes.
And 12 is 4 times 3. Right? Those are your numbers basically are 3, 4, and 12. When you're dealing with the zodiac, your patterns are all built on those. There's some with 2, like the male-female thing is 2, but mostly it's 3 and 4, and then that makes 12. And that's what's special about the number 12. I mean, 12 has all these divisions, more divisions than usual numbers at that smallness, in that range of smallness. 12 can be cleanly divided more often than most of the other ones. That's one of the nice things about the way the universe is made for us on Earth. So with trines, you're dealing with 3s, and that's why it's trine. And then with the quadrants or angles, you're dealing with 4s, kendras or 4s. So what is it in the zodiac that comes in 3s? You already actually identified it. Do you understand my question?
Yes,
Yeah,
it would be the modes, right?
No, it would be the elements that come in 3s.
Elements,
Yeah.
yes.
And the modes come in 4s.
4s, yes.
Like, so in other words, there's only 3 modes, so there's going to be 4 signs in each. But there's 4 elements, so there's going to be 3 signs in each one. So what was your question was like, what's the dynamic of the signs with this architecture of the Kendra and the Kona? Yeah. So that's your dynamic. The dynamic is whatever the mode of the ascendant is. Like if your ascendant is cardinal, then all of your Kendras are cardinal.
Okay.
That's what every cardinal sign will be, a Kendra.
Okay.
So if your ascendant is Aries, then it's going to be Libra on the other side, Cancer below, and Capricorn on top. All 4 of the cardinal signs will be in the Kendras.
Okay.
But if it's Taurus that's rising, then all of your fixed signs will be in the Kendras.
Right.
The 4th one from Taurus is Scorpio, and the 4th one from Scorpio is Aquarius. No, the 8th one from Taurus is Scorpio. The 4th one from Scorpio is Leo. The 4th one from Taurus is Leo. And then on top you get Aquarius. Right, so Taurus is number 1. Then you'll have the next fixed sign, which is Leo, number 4. The next fixed sign, Scorpio, number 7. And then the next fixed sign, Aquarius, number 10.
Okay.
So that's that dynamic. And then if your ascendant is Taurus, like you said, then you'll know your trines too, because those will just be the earth signs.
Okay.
Is that what you were talking about?
Yes. And then the 7th place or the opposition, let's say, to Aries would be Libra. So now what I wanted to know is that even if we didn't have the planets here and we were just going to look at these sign dynamics, that concept of 4th or squared, could we do that just to get a mental picture of how they would be difficult at that 90-degree angle or in opposition?
Yeah.
Yes.
Remember we did one of your sessions was on the zodiac compatibility, and then the patterns in the zodiac. So it's all because of this dynamic that's inherent in the signs itself. Like your opposition sign will always be the same mode, right? So if it's Taurus, then the opposition sign is going to be Scorpio. It's the same mode. They're both fixed. If it's Gemini, the opposition is Sagittarius. They're both dual. Always the same mode. Now, same mode means like two people fighting for the same thing. Like same mode, it puts in that square thing. So it's like sameness. Now that sameness, however, can either be good or bad, right? It's sameness. So it's like, it can be two people fighting for the same thing, or it can be some other kind of sameness, right? Because sameness sometimes means like you're butting heads. You're trying to do the same thing at the same time. You're stepping on each other's toes. Or sameness can mean, oh, you're doing the same thing. You're synchronized. So when it's a bad element, when the element doesn't get along with the sign, the focal sign, then it's that kind of sameness. That's, you're stepping on each other's toes. You're clashing. You're trying to grab the same cookie at the same time.
Okay.
So, for example, let's say Aries. The same modes as Aries. Aries is cardinal. The same modes are Cancer, right? But Cancer is water.
Right.
So what kind of sameness does Cancer have with Aries? It's going to have a sameness that they defeat each other. They're grabbing the same thing at the same time, then they fight about it. They clash. So the fourth from a sign gets that quality. Move it down to Pisces, let's say. Pisces is dual. The fourth from it is what? Gemini. The other dual, the next dual sign in the sequence. But look at the difference. The elements there, they're not as dramatic as Aries and Cancer, but you got water in Pisces and air. You can't breathe in the water.
Right.
And water and air aren't as dramatic as fire and water mix, but water and air also don't really do anything for each other. So they both have sameness, they're both dual, but the elements aren't synergizing with the sameness. So the overall picture is that sameness isn't going really well. But now look at the opposition sign, like look at the opposition to Aries, it's Libra. So there's sameness because they're both cardinal, but then now look at the elements. One is fire, Aries is fire, and Libra is air. So that's a great combination. That's your combustion. Air and fire is... So that's the kind of sameness where it's like, wow, that's exactly what I need. You have something that's totally opposite from me, but you have something that's totally the same for me. And it's just this dynamic balance that I love. Right. So those opposition signs, they are very strong. It's not peaceful or calm or anything. They're really strong. They get really strongly involved with each other, but in like a mutually good way. Which is odd. Why does Western astrology say that the opposition is a difficult aspect? But I'm not an expert on Western astrology, so I can't say why. But the rest of the patterns, as far as I know about Western astrology, the way that they consider the aspects supports this stuff that we're talking about. And then you'll have your 10th, right? So far we looked at Aries to Cancer, that was the 4th or 90 degree. Or we looked at Pisces to Gemini, the 4th or 90 degree. You can do the same thing with the 10th. Like from Taurus, the 10th one would be Aquarius. So they're both fixed. They have a sameness, but one's air and one's earth. What you want is fire and air and earth and water. Those are the elements that are great together.
Okay.
And what you don't want is fire and water. Right? And earth and air. Earth and air will create a desert. It's like the air dries out the fertility. Air and water you also don't want. If you group the elements into gender, it's easy to remember these patterns. Like there's the male elements and the female elements. The male elements are fire and air, and the female elements are earth and water. So they want to hang out with each other. Under rare circumstances, when the opposition is just right, they want to hang out. They want to hang out with the opposite. The male wants to hang out with the woman wants to hang out with the male when it's just right. Yes. In other words, when it's the 7th sign away. But when, under most cases, the female just wants to hang around with females and the male wants to hang around with males.
I see.
As not talking about every male. I'm just talking about the gender dynamic of the thing. So you'll find that any element from the male group isn't really so greatly compatible with any element from the female group. So fire and water, fire and earth doesn't really go. Or air and earth, air and water, they don't really go together. They won't make a dynamic. But together, like air and fire is fantastic. or water and earth is fantastic. They really complement each other.
Couldn't we say air and let's say earth is more something like the pollination effect, or water and earth would be like irrigation, so it still would work compared to, for instance, fire and water seem really bizarre.
Okay, right. So you got in the four elements are they make a spectrum.
Okay.
So like fire is very male, and water and air is kind of male, but it has female qualities. And earth is kind of female, but it has male qualities. And water is very female. So the clash between fire and water is the most extreme, but the clash between air and earth is the least extreme.
Okay. Is that what that fire and water, that is it called Gundanta point?
Gandanta, yeah, that's
Gundanta. It would be related to this dynamic shift, right?
yeah. Can we say something or other about Gandanta? This is a point that I would like to vent on.
Yes, please.
Gandanta is one of the most poorly translated words or concepts that I've seen. You know, it's just, the simple meaning of Gandanta is that it's the end of a section. That's what the word actually means, the end of a section. It doesn't have to do with a karmic knot. It's not, maybe it does have to do with a karmic knot, but please don't say that this word means, something blah, 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 blah. What the word means is it's the end of a section. Ganda is a section.
Okay, section.
Like on your face, you'll have two gandas, one on this side and one on that side. And then, so ganda is also used for cheeks.
Right. Okay.
So at the end, the gand anta just means the end. So it's the gand anta, the end of the section. So you get sections, earth. Like, so people will say, like, look, you have to have a sidereal zodiac because the nakshatras have to end at the same point where the Rashi ends for you to have a Gandanta, but you don't, because you just have earth, water, fire. What is it? How does the zodiac pattern go? The zodiac pattern goes fire, earth, air, water, and then repeats fire, earth, air, water. So those four are a Ganda segment. And you'll have your Navamsha, which is a super important thing because it makes 108 parts and it has to do with Dharma. Your Navamsha will also end at that point. So you get a very significant section every 4 signs.
I see. Okay.
That's simply why it's called Gandanta.
I see. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. And while we're on this element and mode, I wanted to ask you a question about the fixed nature of water and air. For example, Aquarius is a fixed air and Scorpio is fixed water. How do we visualize this? All this time, I'm trying to imagine something as fixed water and fixed air.
Right. The fixed air is Aquarius. So it's very difficult to fix air, isn't it?
Yes.
Right. The air's the very nature of air is that it moves around.
Yes.
So with the most typically airy sign would be Gemini, which is dual air, because air just wants to go everywhere. Sometimes it blows this direction, sometimes it blows that direction. It's not like a river that just flows in the same direction. Like Cancer is just water that moves in one direction. It's cardinal water. But air doesn't really go in one direction. Chanchala moves here and there. So Gemini is the most archetypically airy sign. But then you can have Libra, which is cardinal air, which is more like the wind is for a long time constantly going in the same direction. But with Aquarius, what you have is like horse latitude. Like that's a horse latitude is a section on the globe. If you were sailing a ship, you have to stay out of the horse latitude because the horse latitude is like getting close to the equator, and the wind cells, the way that wind cells work on the earth, you get no airflow there. Or you get these significant periods of time where the wind doesn't move at all.
I see. Okay. What is it called again? Horse
latitudes. Because they call it the horse latitudes because you would have to throw your horses. Your ship would stall, like because they had sailing boats. So the ship would stall, and then what are you going to do? You're there. You might be there for months. For for weeks at least, or months. What are you going to do with your food? How are you going to eat? You're on a boat. Right, so they would start killing the livestock and stuff on the boats.
I see.
Okay. Kill the horses and stuff. Or people would go crazy and start jumping off.
can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Aquarius is like that kind of a stale, stalled, no breeze day. You know, where the air is just like, because it's a Saturn sign. You know, and that's what Saturn does. Saturn really constricts things and holds things in place. So Aquarius, even though it's an air sign, it's not like a pleasure-oriented sign like Gemini and Libra. It's actually more about restricting your pleasures and for the sake of service, for the sake of doing things to others. Aquarius is the water bearer. It brings water to others. It's the waitress, the waiter. So it's the one it's not having fun, but it's going to constrict its own, it's going to sacrifice its own pleasures for helping others. That's what the fixed air is all about. I'm going to hold my air still. Like air moving around means it feels good. Air standing still means it doesn't feel good. It feels stuffy.
Suffocating.
Yeah, so in Aquarius, people have a lot of self-sacrifice.
Okay.
Or that Aquarius sign has a lot of self-sacrifice in it, and it's really willing to make other people happy at its own expense.
Okay.
Fixed
And
air.
with the water and the fixed water?
Yeah.
Sorry, yes.
Well, Cancer, right? Cancer is cardinal water. Pisces is dual water.
Yes.
And Scorpio is fixed. So with Cancer, it's like, here's a river. You know, it's like it's moving. The water's moving. It's going in a consistent direction. With Pisces, it's like just waves going back and forth, right?
Yes.
One time you're going this way, so your emotions are going like this. With Cancer, your emotions are like because water is emotional. Your emotions, your opinions, your feelings, it's all like, so they have strong opinions and feelings, but they're private because it's a moon sign. Whereas Mars extroverts their opinions and feelings. Scorpio belongs to Mars, but it's a water sign that belongs to Mars. So Scorpio extroverts their feelings and opinions. Cancer has strong feelings and opinions, but they don't want to extrovert them. They want to keep them private and safe and, protect them. So they have this, like, it's like an underground, Cancer is like an underground river. Scorpio is like this, something else. It's got like a lot of steam coming out of it because of the presence of Mars there. Scorpio is like inherently a fire-water combination because you have a fire planet ruling a water sign. So there's a lot of bubbling and steaming and boiling. And feelings are coming up to the surface, getting extroverted. So the way I think of the water part of Scorpio is it's really deep because it's fixed. Things which become fixed, then they can get deeper and more rooted. The fixed signs are very rooted.
Rooted, okay.
Yeah, like Aquarius is quite rooted. That's why it's willing to accept discipline. It disciplines itself. It can stay in one place and do the tasks. Taurus is very rooted.
Yes.
Taurus is very rooted. Leo is very rooted. It pulls people to it. It becomes the cynosure. It becomes the gravity center. And Scorpio is very rooted in the sense that it's water root. So the root in Scorpio is there's a really depth to the emotions. So you find tons of Scorpio people really love astrology, psychology, sexuality, because they have very deep emotions. They like things that go really deep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I see Scorpio with water.
Okay. And then wherever these signs go, based on one's ascendant, then they bring all of these qualities and mix it to the quality of the house, right? That's elements, the mode.
Say that again.
So let's say I am a Taurus ascendant. So that ascendant is going to have that fixed quality, is going to be earth. So everything related to that first house and what's related to the first house will have all of these qualities within the first house, right?
Right. So if you're a Taurus ascendant, then your Kendras are all going to be fixed and your Konas are all going to be earth.
Yes. Okay.
Right. So going back to the first topic that you brought up. So that chart that has a Taurus ascendant gets that dynamic of being very solid.
Right. Okay.
Right. Practical, maybe probably healthy. It's very easy to make a Taurus chart healthy. I mean, now you have the case where here's a Taurus person who died at the age of 18 or something. Well, fine. I mean, but this is like your template. It's just like if you're playing a video game and you have like a template for a certain class of character. That particular class of character very easily can make X kind of end result character very, very great. But it doesn't mean that you can't do other things with that template of a character, right? If I give you, or to give you another non-video game example, like if I give you, cookie dough, then it's really great for making cookies. You can make cookies. But it doesn't mean you can't do anything else with it. You can do something else with cookie dough, but it probably wouldn't come out just as good.
Right.
So when you have a certain ascendant, it will support a lot of outcomes. If the planets are configured to also support those outcomes, then it happens really well. But if you have an ascendant that's very stable and practical and real, like Taurus, but you have planets all in the dual signs, or the stable planets like the sun, or debilitated and weak, or something, right? Or in the 12th or something, or in the 7th and the 10th, maybe even. Well, the sun in the 10th is okay. Like if you have the interpretations from the chart don't match the interpretations that are supported by the ascendant, then you get cookie dough that you're trying to make croissants out of.
Okay.
So it's like you're not really getting a croissant or a cookie. It's kind of messing things up.
I understand. Makes sense. Yes. Okay. I understand. Thank you. Can I move to the ascendant?
Let me finish my video game example. Or it's like having an elf character that you're trying to make into like a Conan the Barbarian, right?
Oh,
you need like a Nordic character to make your end character video game like a Conan the Barbarian warrior.
very
So
true.
if you take your elf character and then you give all kinds of swords and like muscles to this character, but they're a little tiny elf, but they're really designed for magic. So if you give them all kinds of sorcery skills and stuff, then that becomes an outstanding character can play the game really well.
Very true. Yes.
All right.
Okay, so the question of ascendant. So I understand what the ascendant generally means, but then when we come to do the transit charts, this thing is just dancing around. Within 24 hours is going through every sign,
Oh yeah,
right?
forget about the ascendant. Forget that.
Forget that. Okay, so let's say I'm going to look at the transit of, let's say, my own birth chart, for instance. When I go back all the years to the exact day, it's falling into a particular house, and it takes about 30 days to complete that house. Is that something we consider when we do interpretations or no?
What takes 30 days to complete the house?
So, for instance, right now, the ascendant, if I were to do a transit of my chart right now, my own birth ascendant is falling, let's say, into Sagittarius. And it takes about 30 days to go from 0 degrees to 30 degrees.
Are you talking about Persian astrology? Like the Varshapala?
No, I'm talking about, like, if you do daily election charts, there's the ascendant moves, the whole chart moves, right? So if I fix my own chart and then I do the transit charts, that ascendant from day of my birth till now, it takes 30 days.
That's called a munta, or a progressed ascendant.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, it's utilized in Vedic Indian astrology because the Indians at some point in time studied the Persian astrology and wrote books like Tajik Nilamani, some books about Tajika astrology, Persian astrology, and the Persians had a solar return system.
Oh, okay.
That the Indians really liked, and that now it's preserved better in India than in Persia. So if you really want to learn about that Persian technique, it's easiest to study it through those Sanskrit books that were written about it.
Okay.
And in that system, there's something called munta, which it's just a Persian word. I don't know what Persian word it is, and it's probably not exactly a Persian word because then it gets spelled in the native alphabets, and it slightly changes, and people mispronounce it and change it. But it's this kind of meaningless word, munta. But munta is the progressed ascendant. So I think it's every year, the ascendant progresses 30 degrees.
30 degrees.
Right. But that's some very specific technique for like doing your solar return charts. And you'll see in the solar return chart where is, you could do it for a daily chart, you know, because then you take a ratio of how much has the year progressed, and that's how far the ascendants progressed. So where's the munta right now? And you say, okay, the munta is in X number of houses from the birth ascendant.
Yes.
And so you get an interpretation based on that. Oh, it's in the 8th, or it's in the 6th. This is going to be a hard year. Oh, okay, great. It's in the 5th, or it's in the 9th. This is going to be a good year, or good whatever, good day, whatever you're looking at the munta for.
Why would one use this? Or what is it? Just based on where it's sitting, you just interpret it based on the house?
Why would you use this technique? Because it's, why do you use transits? Because you want to know because you're trying to predict or forecast how things are going to happen. So you use transits to predict and forecast. But why would you use dashas? Because you want to predict and forecast. So why would you use progressions? Progressions are like a third technique. Indian astrology, popular version of it these days, mostly only uses dashas.
Dashas, okay.
Then probably then because you have a lot of Westerners like myself doing Indian astrology, you see more use of transits than you do from the native astrologers. But in the native astrology, they talk about gochara, which means how the planets transit.
Okay.
But the Western astrologers doing Indian astrology tend to, including myself, I'm not going to be shy about it, we tend to use more of a Western approach to the transits rather than the gochara approach.
I see.
Gochara approach is more like easier version of transit prediction. Like it's in this particular planet today is in this house from your moon. So that means X, Y, Z. Whereas the modern system, the system that I use, is more exact. Like this planet is coming to the degree where it can aspect your birth, blah, blah.
I see.
And then the third thing that you could use, so you would want to use as many tools as you can, or there's another tool, maybe somebody wasn't satisfied with the results, that the way they could use dashas and transits, and they looked for another way to do things, and they came up with progressions. Progressions are very popular in the advanced Western astrology these days. People love progressions. They do solar progressions, they do lunar progressions, I think. They do all kinds of stuff.
Okay. I came across this completely by accident, just flipping through a chart, watching it go by, and I noticed the ascendant takes about 30 days. So I thought I asked you. See.
Well, if you know, because like you said, it's dancing around, right?
Yes, the daily one's dancing around, but
right,
the
daily one dances around.
Yes.
But
yes, the one for the actual birth, it takes about 30 days to move from one sign to another sign.
Well,
so
if it's your actual birth, then why would it move at all? Birth is a snapshot.
Yes. No, in terms of transits from
right,
where it
that
started.
transit is called a progression.
Progression. Okay.
That's called a progression. If you look at the ascendant in the transit, it's going to go around. It's going to go 2 hours. It's going to move not 30 days or not a year or something. The ascendant's going to move in 2 hours through one sign.
Yes. Okay. Now I understand what that is.
I don't. All I know about progressions is probably what I already told you.
Okay.
I don't use them. I did Varshpala readings for a while.
Yes.
Because I was curious about it. People were curious to have it, but I stopped doing it. I don't think it's useful. It's not useful for my particular style as an astrologer to try to branch out into too many things. I just like to stick with the things that I know how to do and just refine it and get it better and better and better.
Yes.
So I don't exactly know what you're talking about, what exact kind of progression it is or something, but I'm pretty darn sure what you're talking about is a progression.
Okay. You know more because I had no idea what I was looking at.
Okay.
Thank you. So now to the actual ascendant. So we have our fixed ascendant at time of birth, doesn't move. And in relation to the signs and to the houses, and I always hear relative to the moon, the ascendant, you have to read the ascendant to the moon. Can you explain that one?
You probably hear that from me a lot, right?
Yes.
Yeah. If you look at the word for what we think is the word for ascendant in Sanskrit, it's lagna.
Yes.
But lagna is an abbreviated version. It's supposed to be called Uday Lagna. Okay. So actually the lagna part of the phrase doesn't mean ascendant. Udaya means ascendant. Udaya means rising. So Lagna doesn't mean ascendant. It must mean something else. So what the heck does it mean?
Mm-hmm.
Lug is something very heavy and anchoring. It's something that is the anchor point. Lagna means the anchor point. So that you can have various types of anchor points for your interpretations. That opens up a whole new wing on the mansion of astrology, is that you don't have to only use the ascendant as the focal point. You can use other things as the focal point and organize houses around that focal point.
Okay.
But the most important one, obviously, is the ascendant. But there's other things that can give you some details or subtext or nuances.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you add it in with the ascendants, with the chart that's organized around the ascendant. And the next up in terms of importance is the moon from the what's my saying relative to the moon?
The ascendants relative to the distance of the moon, right?
I would just say, like, you have a chart that's relative to the ascendant. So let's say, for example, Capricorn rises and Saturn is in Taurus. So that means Saturn is in the 5th house relative to the ascendant.
Yes.
From the Udaya Lagna, from the ascendant, Saturn in Taurus, if the ascendant is in Capricorn, Saturn in Taurus is in the 5th. But what if you have the moon in Gemini?
So 6.
Now, the moon in Gemini is in the 6th place, the 6th house, relative to the ascendant. But what about relative to Saturn? What if Saturn, for some reason, was the Lagna? Instead of the Udaya Lagna, we had a Shani Lagna, which we might want to do for some reason. Like maybe it's Shani Dasha. Maybe it's the Saturn's Dasha. So then we might want to look at the chart from Saturn's point of view.
Okay.
Then now the moon in Gemini, Saturn in Taurus, that's what? 2. The moon would be in Saturn's 2nd house. So the most prominent alternate Lagna is Chandra Lagna. Udaya Lagna is the main one, and then the most prominent alternate is Chandra Lagna.
Mm-hmm.
Because that the moon is the second fastest factor. The fastest factor in the sky is the ascendant. It moves the quickest. So it will give you the finest detail, right?
Yes.
So if you anchor your chart around the ascendant, you get the finest picture. You get the finest focus. But you could anchor it around the moon. So now you're focusing not really upon the concrete details of what's manifesting in the person's life, but you're focusing on you're reading the chart in terms of how does this person feel? What's their moon? What's in their emotions? What's in their mind? Okay, this guy's got Saturn in the 5th house from his ascendant, but he's got Saturn in the 12th house from his moon. That's the condition, right? The ascendant is Capricorn, Saturn is Taurus, and the moon is Gemini. Saturn's in the 5th from the ascendant, but Saturn's in the 12th from the moon.
Right.
So 5th from the ascendant tells you make some interpretation about that. Maybe he's logical. Or maybe he doesn't have that much love life or something. Saturn in the 5th house. Maybe not that many children. A problem with the child or something. Saturn in the 5th. Saturn in the 12th from the moon. Oh, maybe he really constricts his desires.
Right.
The Saturn in the 12th is good. Saturn fits in the 12th house. There's a synergy of the nature of the house with the nature of the planet. He constricts his, but it's not going to make it rosy, but you're going to have the strength of Saturn is going to be a good thing. Saturn 12th from the moon. Wow, he's critical, but that's good. You know, he's not frivolous. Saturn in the 12th from the moon. His desires are not spending a lot of money because he got Saturn there. Mm-hmm. So that thing about the moon's point of view is, you would say more about how the person feels. Oh, they hold back their desires, or they don't party too much. They don't exert that much. And, you know, they're not exerting that much because they don't feel like it. They don't want to. They're a bit restrained or pessimistic about the value of pursuing desires, because moon means desires, feelings, and everything. Now Saturn's in the 12th from it.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
So depending on what your focal point is, you give a focal point to the interpretation.
Okay. So let's say we look at the Chandra chart here where where moon is in Gemini, right? The ascendants, if it's Capricorn ascendant here, the Capricorn, that what happens to the ascendants? Do we
It
still
kind of
look at
disappears. It
it
kind of
kind of
disappears because its relevance was only as the lugna. It's not an actual point.
okay.
But if you want, you can just say, okay, it just disappears. We don't care about it. But if you want to research, you can say, what if it doesn't disappear? What interpretations can we make on that? Are those good? You know, are those good means like, does it work in 90 out of 100 charts, or does it work at a 9 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 charts? Then it's a good system. So you could say, well, if the moon is in the 6th house from the ascendant, that means the ascendant is in the 8th house from the moon.
Yes.
So I guess the person, you see, like the moon in the 6th house from the ascendant means they're like a problem solver. The person is like, their basic way of life and thinking is they need to solve problems. They feel like they need to solve problems, and they're like they're workers. They're not party people and stuff. They're basically like workers. They like to solve problems and do things for people, but not frilly things. It's like real down to earth stuff. Then if the ascendant is in the 8th house of the moon, means, well, maybe the 8th house is quite important to this person. I don't know what would that mean. Maybe that means that they love psychology. Maybe that means they're really into occult things, spiritual things.
I see.
Since it's in the 8th from the moon, maybe it has a lot to do with sexuality, because the moon is desires.
Yes.
Right. So maybe they're very sexual.
Okay. I understand. Okay. And going back to what you were saying, looking at the chart's ascendant from, let's say, another perspective, I'm trying to look at it.
All right. Let me clarify that.
Yes.
It's not that we really look at the ascendant from another perspective. We usually the ascendant is the focal point of the chart, but now we get a new perspective by making something else the focal point.
The focal point.
You have alternate lugnas, and I'm pretty sure that Gemini astrology has several of them. Like one thing that you hear a lot is the Aruta lugna. There's other ways of calculating where you should, what you should use as a focal point for answering a particular type of question or addressing a certain kind of topic.
Okay.
So it's not like we're looking at the ascendant from different points of view, but we're taking different things as if they were the ascendant.
Okay. So right now, I'm looking at the chart of this moment. It's Virgo's hour, and Rahu falls into the 12th house in Leo. So if I were to make Rahu as my focal point and bring it to the 1st house, why would I do that? What am I looking for to bring Leo and Rahu into the 1st house?
Yeah, why would you bring Rahu into the 1st house? It's not very common. Like the main thing is you make your ascendant the anchor point. The other one is you make the moon, or the third thing is the sun.
The sun, okay.
So why would you do Rahu? You would do Rahu if it's a Rahu Dasha, or if you just want to know, like, what's going on with my Rahu? I feel so unsettled. I feel so, like, you know that there's some Rahu, something happening, because you get all the symptoms of Rahu: chaos, change, uncertainty, radical feelings. Then maybe you want to know more about your Rahu. Well, all right, flip it to Rahu's position. See how does Rahu. By doing that, you can see how do these other planets interact with Rahu. If Rahu is the focal point of the chart, then we might see, oh, Jupiter's in the 8th from Rahu. They're really going to be like iconoclastic to religion, because Rahu is iconoclastic and Jupiter is not in a good position to it.
I see. Okay.
Or something, you can start to develop interpretations based on the configuration of the planets to the configuration of a focal point. If you want to see how the person feels about love, maybe you would make Venus as the focal point. And you could say, oh, the person has the moon in the 6th house from Venus. Maybe they're not that into love, or maybe they see love as a problem, or maybe they try to express their love by working, or maybe they try to express their love by solving problems for people. Stuff like that.
Okay.
This is
Yes.
why I feel like there's not too much need to like go and explore 55 different schools of astrology, because it's like if you just stick with basics, the basics give you so many possible permutations and combinations. If you just know the planets, what the planet symbolizes, what the houses symbolize, what the signs symbolize, and the different ways of looking at them, you can spend the rest of your life looking at one chart.
Yes. Yes. When I discovered I could move the planets and kind of look at it from, let's say, the first house, it really helped me to with the whole aspects, like the trines and the squares, because when you look at a chart and it's in the sixth house, and when I was learning, I was just freaking out that something's in the sixth house.
Right.
But just looking at it from another perspective, it just showed me different dynamics that goes beyond just the sixth house.
Right. That's a good point. So
In
let's
that
say,
sense, it helped me.
yeah. Oh no, I have a chart with the moon in the sixth house. I'm like a very serious, depressive person. Yeah, okay, you have the moon in the sixth house from the ascendant, but it's in the second house from Saturn. It's in the ninth house from Jupiter, whatever, you know.
Yes.
So the moon has a certain relationship to your practical life that you see from the ascendant, but it has a different relationship to other areas or focal points of life. And you can
Yeah.
see that literally by just making those planets that symbolize those areas, make them the focal point, make them the definition of the first house.
Yes.
Now, there's an interesting thing that Parashar says in Parashar Horshastra. Everybody knows about it, really. It's quite well known. It's called Sudarshan Chakra. It's a play on words because Sudarshan Chakra is Vishnu's weapon. He's got this like ninja star that spins around. And he has this cool thing, like he's got a ninja star that spins, so it's like a gyro. You just hold it on his fingertip like a spinner, and he doesn't have to throw it. His mind is linked with it, so he just like directs it by his will. That's why it like never misses.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's what the Sudarshan Chakra is. It's a chakra because it's a spinning razor wheel, and Sudarshan means it's blessed. To see it is a great thing. But the way that the Parashara Horshastra uses the play on words is chakra also means a chart, a kundali, a birth chart is a chakra. A chakra is a wheel. And actually, to do this technique, Sudarshan Chakra, you'll have to draw your things as a wheel. You'll have to draw your chart as a wheel. You can't use a diamond or a square. And Sudarshan literally means good vision, a good audience, a good interview.
Okay.
So it's the wheel of good vision.
I see.
It's the birth chart that's easy to see or something. It's the birth chart that gives you a clear vision, a clear sight, is this technique, Sudarshan Chakra. So what he says to do is first make a wheel. I think he recommends it be the inner wheel, or he may not even specify. First make a wheel with the Udaya Lagna, with the ascendant as the anchor point, as the first house. Then outside that, make another wheel with Chandra Lagna. So let's say if Capricorn rises and the moon is in Gemini, the first wheel would have Capricorn at the top and moon in the sixth house. The second wheel would have moon on top.
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
So you would see that the moon is in the first house. And then the third wheel would have the sun on top.
Okay.
So let's take two points. Let's take Capricorn rising, sun in Leo, and moon in Gemini. So sun is in the 8th, moon is in the 6th.
Yes.
So that when you have your first wheel, you got the moon over here in the 6th and the sun over there in the 8th. Mm-hmm. Now, when you do a Chandra Lagna chart, you're going to have moon in the 1st, sun in the 3rd.
Yes.
So now you can see that actually, the sun is in the 8th house from one point of view, but it's in the 3rd house from another point of view. So you can see all your houses at once with the Sudarshan Chakra. Then take the sun and make it on the top for the 3rd layer of the wheel. Mm-hmm. Then the moon is going to be in the 11th.
Yes.
Right. So now you see that this chart where you just saw this person is a real like software debugger, problem solver, nitpicker, because they got this moon in the 6th house, sun in the 8th house. They're super critical and problem oriented. This is my chart. But then if you look at it from the moon, then all of a sudden you see, well, that sun that's in the 8th house is in the 3rd house. It's the ideal spot for the sun. And it's in Leo too, right? So this person's mind has got a lot of strength, and there's like communication abilities from the 3rd house.
Yes.
And then when you look at the sun's chart, you see, well, this person is into arts, beauty, dance, culture, their career. And the sun's one is more oriented to career, right? So I have a career as a musician, previous my career as astrologers. So that's what the reason why he calls it Sudarshan Chakra is because it lets you do your house interpretations with like all the 3 lagnas combined into one picture. So when you want to say, what's the guy got in his 3rd house? If you look at a Sudarshan Chakra, you'll see that he's got the moon. He's got the sun in his 3rd house. From the point of view of the moon, but he's got the sun in his 3rd house.
Right.
So you got to ascribe that quality to him. What's he got in his 11th house? He's got the moon there.
Yes.
So it's very useful.
That's a good dynamic to see how things are interacting. Yes.
Yeah, it's a fantastic technique. Yeah. And it's also interesting because it shows ancient Indian astrologers using biwheels and triwheels and using wheels.
Yeah. They were using wheels.
They're using wheels like, the way that the Western astrologers prefer to draw things these days. And they were using bi and tri wheels, which is very popular. Now with software, you can do a bi-wheel, tri-wheel. And you do a bi-wheel to like do transits. Bi-wheel is essential for reading transits. You have 2 wheels at the same time, or a bi-wheel for compatibility is very useful.
Okay. And the tri-wheel, do we still use it in the same context that you were just explaining, or does it have
wheels you could do for 3 people?
I've never seen that.
It's not that important. Maybe somebody who's watching this video knows how to do it. Maybe the people that know more about Western astrology would know how.
Okay. I think maybe I have time for one more question.
Sure.
So let's say in the Navamsa, the D9 chart, we're dividing the 9th house. That's a division of the signs into 9, right?
Right. So you're not dividing the 9th house, but you're dividing.
Then divide the signs into 9. So where does the ascendant still show up somewhere in the Navamsa, or we don't?
It becomes in this event. It becomes the Navamsa's ascendant.
It is the Navamsa's ascendant.
Right. So I always talk about myself because I know my chart, but
yes.
Yeah, and I think I showed this. So my ascendant is in Capricorn, and it's like 20-something degrees. So it's in Leo Navamsha of Capricorn.
Yes.
So if you draw my Navamsha chart, what's going to be the 1st house? Leo.
Yeah.
Because the ascendant is in Leo in the Navamsha.
Okay.
If you draw, yeah.
Okay. I understand. Okay. And
you have time for another question.
I do have time. Okay. So now in terms of transits, I know just a few minutes ago, you said the ascendant moves too fast and the moon probably moves too fast to interpret a chart based on the movement of the ascendant and the moon. So what do we use it for, or do we just completely ignore this
ignore those guys?
Just ignore
My basic advice is, of course, somebody's going to say, how can you say to ignore it? It's so important for XYZ. But you know what? 80% of the time, 90% of the time, just ignore that junk. You need to look, first you need to find the events, the areas of time that are propitious, that have like great potential for doing something good or bad, Then once you find those windows, then you can start to look at the smaller details of when exactly you can narrow it down. If you start looking at little details like the moon and the ascendant, it will take you 10 years to examine 1 month's worth of transits, to comb through 1 month of transits. So first think about, when is Saturn getting into an important configuration at the same time Jupiter's in an important configuration, and then search around that area of time.
Okay.
For finer details. The ascendant just moves too fast to do anything significant. Like if I blaze through your house, maybe I'll make some damage, but not that much, right? But if I sit there for like a year, then your house is going to be all messed up.
Right.
Right? So it's what a transit does is it triggers a point. So if that triggering happens just momentarily, then you just get a little, what was that kind of effect. But if that transit's happening like day after day for a month or for months, then you're going to get stuff like, God, like, what is going on? Or wow, I'm, a really significant good event or a really significant bad event happens when there's slow transits.
I see.
But the moon, the ascendant, and all those quick planets, they stand still in your birth chart, right? Your birth chart is a snapshot.
Yes.
So if you want to think about, well, then what's the relevance of moon, Mercury, Venus, all the fast planets ascendant in transits? They're relevant in how they're being transited.
I see.
Like Jupiter transiting our moon, or Jupiter transiting the ascendant, Rahu transiting Venus or Mercury is much more significant than Mercury or the moon transiting Rahu or Jupiter.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
You can do another question. Got another one?
Ascendant and nakshatras. But I think you just answered that, because I was thinking the ascendant is going so fast, the moon is going so fast, they're going through so many nakshatras in a week span. How do we interpret this one?
So you just, every day has a different nakshatra.
Yes.
And every, then you have hours and all that stuff. So there's nothing major happens just because of something from a day.
Yes.
But of course, things happen in a moment, like the nuclear bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima was dropped at a particular moment. But it was the result of, years and years and years and centuries of aggression.
Yes.
And defense and all that kind of stuff. So, of course, there's going to be a trigger that triggers it. So that's what I'm saying. Like, first you have to find like the energy. Where does it get built up? Where can it potentially be released? Then you'll see. You may see, because astrology is very complicated. We don't always know what to look for. But then you might see, that particular moment that this happened, the ascendant was in this particular place, and the moon was in that particular place. But if you try to do predictions that way, you'll drive yourself crazy or be wrong all the time, because every day the ascendant gets into that place. Every month the moon gets into that place.
Yes. Could we say, for example, Jupiter's transit or Saturn's transit is more of the what, and then if we pay very close attention and study ascendant and moon, we can say the when with those two?
No, because all transits are about when. The birth chart is about what.
The birth chart's the what. Okay.
The transit has to trigger something in the birth chart, so you have to figure out what's getting triggered by understanding that person's birth chart. That's why the same things don't happen to people in the same day all the time. It's very unusual that the same things happen to 2 different or 3 different or 50 different people at the same time.
Very true.
That's something that you hear about in the news, when like one event happens to 50 people. But there's tons of things happening where it's just individuals. So usually things just affect a specific individual who happens to have a birth chart that's sensitive to that particular transit.
I understand. Okay. Thank you for clarifying this.
You're very welcome. As always. All right.
Thank you.
That's all for now. See you next week.
Yes.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.